Good evening, everybody. Welcome to another Camberley Tuesday Zoom meeting. I think it's about the 98th meeting. So we're a couple of weeks' time, we'll be on our 100th. So that's a major success. This evening, we've got the pleasure of Clive Frostick joining us, who's had some interesting games playing for Camberley online and others. And I shall thank him for joining us today and hand over to you, Clive.
Thank you, Martin. Yeah, it's interesting. Paul was saying he has a number of wins that he's not proud of. Because what I'm going to show you today are a couple of games that I am strangely proud of, even though I didn't win either of them. So I have the opposite problem. I'm proud of my games, but I just never seem to win them. So what I was going to show you was the two games I played for Camberley in the online match a few weeks ago against Edinburgh. Was it Edinburgh? It was
Edinburgh, yeah.
It was a Scottish team. When I came up against Freddie Gordon, who's the young prodigy they have up there, who had, I think he'd just come back from the, is it the European teams or something, where he was playing for Scotland. So he's actually playing for the Scottish men's team already. I can't remember exactly how old he is, but he's clearly he's 11 or 12 or something, and he's performing very well. So I was quite excited to play him. Now, when you're playing against juniors, there are a number of myths that you tend to bear in mind, and you sort of apply as principles. The first one I always have in mind is that juniors are no good at end games. So if I can steer it to an end game, I should be in good shape. The second one is that they are great at spotting tactics. So try and don't leave them any chances of nasty tactical tricks. And the third one is that they can be very theoretical. You know, they're right up to date with all the latest theory ideas. So those were my sort of three going in points. Now, I think as we'll see, I'm not sure those assumptions were entirely right, but I'll leave it to you to decide if that was a useful going in point. What I'll do is I'll show you the two games. The first game I'll go through fairly quickly because there's probably not a great deal of interest in that, but it provides an interesting sort of background. And the second game, which is quite interesting, and I think on the evening a number of you were sort of watching it online, because I think I was one of the last to finish, and one or two people said, "Oh yeah, that was interesting," and "Did you see this?" and "Why did you play that?" So and having looked through the game, there's quite a lot going on. So I thought it'd be worth having.
People join the game, Clive, at various different times. So, you know, not many people would have seen it from the beginning if they were playing. So that's quite important.
Yes, yeah, they probably saw it at the end, but and the beginning's quite interesting as well. So okay, so this is how the game started. C3 Sicilian, which I wasn't really expecting, and for some reason, because I've been looking at this line, I played this line against it as black, which was a bit daft because I don't really know it as well as other lines. I tend to normally play early knight f6 line. So we carried on in sort of standard stuff. And then he played a3 in this position. Now, I've played this as both sides, white and black, and an early a3 is always a good idea for white because it stops black bringing this knight on c6 to b4 and into the d5. So it then becomes a lot harder to rearrange your knights. Yeah, the other thing I tend to always bear in mind in these positions is that if black can sort of trade off some pieces, then he'll get a little bit more space to move in, and then black's game becomes much easier to play. and then he can think about playing on that isolated queen's pawn. But if black's a bit cluttered, it can be a little bit of a difficult game. So I should be looking to exchange pieces, and white should probably be avoiding it, and white's probably just looking to attack me. So he drops the bishop back, and now he's looking to play queen d3. So he's put the bishop here ready to take the knight off if he gets that in. So I can sort of ignore that for now. Now he does it. He's obviously threatening to take on f6 and then mate. So I just play g6. I don't really mind doing that, although my black square is a little bit weakened. I'm going to meet bishop h6 with rook e8, which helps to support the e pawn a little bit more. I would imagine this is a fairly theoretical position. I don't really know it.
Clive, could I just ask, when you played bishop b7, is bishop a6 a possibility? To stop the queen going there.
Just, going back, yeah. So in this position,
yeah.
I mean, he could play bishop a6. He's going to play rook e1 anyway. And then I'm a bit concerned when he gets b4 in.
Yes. It's
going to be threatening the fork.
Yes, of course. Yeah.
The b4, b5 is quite a useful idea anyway, because once he kicks my knight away from c6, then the knight comes into e5, sort of unchallenged, and c6 can be quite a weak point.
Yes, thank you.
So I think I'm best to just develop at this stage. The other thing I've got to watch for is a quick d5. An early d5 can be quite nasty in this line. Particularly actually if he's got a rook on e1, there are some nasty lines with a sort of an exchange sack on e7. But that's about all I could remember of the line. So queen d5, g6 to avoid the trouble. He brings his rook to the center. And then I played knight d5. Because I was a little bit worried about a quick d5 coming in. And now this is probably the key point from his point of view in the position. He really should play bishop h6 here, hitting my rook. My rook will go to e8, and then I might drop the bishop back at some point, and the game would continue. But I think white is probably slightly better, and white's still got a decent attack. But strangely enough, he exchanged bishops, which does two things. One, it makes my defensive task a little bit easier because I've got fewer pieces cluttering up around my queen. And secondly, by taking back with this knight, the c6 knight, I've got this square on f5 that looks quite attractive for the knight. So I'm suddenly feeling quite happy with my position. So he carries on bringing his rook across. And now I played rook c8. In fact, in this position, what I probably should do is exchange knights and exchange the bishop for the knight. And then I got a knight against a bishop, but he'll have 3 pawn islands. And I think probably it's slightly better for black, that position. So I think that probably would have been the simpler way to play it. But I think already I'm doing okay here. So I played rook here. He brought the knight forward, and I brought the knight to the square I was keen to go to. He dropped his queen back. He's sort of running out of ideas, but there is an idea, I think, to bring the queen to h6, to play g4, and then bring the queen to h6. So I moved my king up to stop that. And he brought the knight in on e5. Now my knight's gone from c6. Now he might be looking to play knight g4 at some point, but I decided just at this point to take the opportunity to get the queen out and start to cause some slight discomfort. I'm sort of hoping he plays g3 because that will loosen up the white diagonal for my bishop. but in fact, he just drops his bishop back. Now, I had thought after g3, one thing I could do would be to play queen h6 and look to exchange queens. Here, I can actually put the queen on f4 and exchange queens. And again, the more I'm heading towards an endgame, the happier I feel. So exchange queens, and he exchanged rooks. Really, as black here, I'm doing a fair bit better. He dropped a knight back.
Clive?
Yeah?
Why didn't he play g4 and then knight d6?
G4 here?
Yeah.
Well, if he plays g4 here, then I will take on...
Oh, it's on free. Oh, sorry.
The pawn's on free, yeah. Yeah, so just going back. So, yes, takes. Yeah, so if he plays g4, then I will take here, and I'm actually threatening the knight fork on f3.
Yeah.
So he's got a bit of a problem here. So it's not a great position for him. He dropped the knight back to defend it. I don't know what my best here is, but I thought I'll just put some more pressure on that d pawn. Noting that if he plays the rook to d1 to defend it, then I've probably got a knight e2 check and bringing another piece to bear on this pawn. So I think I've won this pawn at this point. So he now kicks my knight, which stops the check, but that white square diagonal is weak. Drop the knight back. He brings his knight in. I can't remember whether that made sense at this point. He's probably a little bit worried about the white diagonal. So I took the extra pawn.
Yeah.
And now I'm just a pawn up. And in fact, I'm even better than that because I've still got something of an attack on the white diagonal. He played rook d1. And this is this evening's first puzzle. What can black do here? I'll give you a clue. I didn't do it. I missed it.
Oh, I see it. Knight e3.
Knight e3. Very good. Very good.
Oh, that's not easy. Oh, I see. Yes.
Yeah, knight e3. In fact, there are other moves. I also play knight e2 check straight away, or knight f4. So there's actually quite a few good moves here. But knight e3 is a fun move. So if he takes it, then obviously I can play a check here, or actually I would probably play it there, with a view to then taking his rook, and I'm hitting his bishop. So I'm just winning an exchange on top of the pawn I've already got. So that would be fairly comfortable. If he doesn't take it, so if he plays something like rook e1, then I've got
Oh, yes.
a rather pleasant knight e2 check. If he takes it, I'll have mate.
Oh, it's mate. Yes.
Yeah, that's just it's fantastic, isn't it? If he plays king there, then now the diagonal is looking rather awkward for him. And I can probably just simply play something like f5 and pick up a free piece. So it's a pretty nice position. I think there was another line. Oh yeah, if he plays rook. Yeah, if he plays rook d2, then again I can just play knight e2 check. It's the same trick.
Yes.
So that would have been quite a nice nice way to finish. Instead of that, I sort of saw the idea, but played knight f6, missing that he could just drop the knight back to c3, which defends the rook, and the threat is sort of is over. If I play knight e2 check, then he can just move the king over, and he's going to pick up my rook. So there's a line where 92 check, king f1. If I take here, he takes my rook. I take his bishop. He can drop the rook back, and now the knight is a little bit stuck. But anyway.
What is the assessment of that position?
The assessment of this position is very much better for black all round.
What if you just win the bishop on b1 and he drops back the rook as you
Oh,
indicate?
I see. Assessment of that position.
Yes, please.
So what was this? This was going knight here.
King f1.
Takes, knight takes, rook takes,
Oh.
knight b1. And rook here. I think bishop here is the only way to save it.
Oh, you
Let's have a look.
F3.
Yeah, I think I've got f3. I think white's winning this actually now.
Yes, I wondered. Well,
yeah.
Did your analysis extend this far? I mean,
No, I haven't really looked at this. I think the analysis of the position after knight e3, just after knight e3 here,
yes,
is something like +7 for black. So
Oh, wow.
Well, that's massive, but yeah.
It's just crushing.
How
Yes.
much time did you have at this point, Clive?
Not a great deal, probably had 2 or 3 minutes, but at this stage I was still very much thinking I'm heading for an endgame, so I was going to beat him in an endgame, and I thought I'll just convert the endgame easily.
Got to be very careful with positions where the 4 knights are in the middle of the board. I mean, the possibilities with kings in easy reach of check are endless almost.
Yeah.
As you demonstrated with your missed win, but it could easily be white has something smart he can do with the knights. You've got to be very careful, I think, haven't you?
Yes. I mean, it's a sort of classic thing where, you know, if he could get this knight on e4 to attack the pawn on f7, then you know, with sort of knight g5 or something, I could be in trouble. You know,
You must be cursing having taken that bishop on e7 rather than gone to h6 and shifted your rook.
Yes, I would imagine he regretted that fairly soon after. That really didn't help him at all.
No.
So I'll probably leave you the rest of this game because I then swapped stuff off, went into an ending, and I found myself I swapped the knight. I was just left with bishops. We had the same coloured bishops, and I let him get a black square blockade, and I couldn't break through. So the game was drawn. So I won't go through all the details of that, but I think the conclusion was that actually he was quite good at endgames, and probably I wasn't. So
Is that the prodigy, Freddie?
yeah, Freddie Gordon. Yeah.
Oh, right. So he's all of 10 years old.
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, I didn't realise it was the man himself. Right.
Yes. Yeah. Young lad who.
Don't publish this, Clive, until, you know, give it another few years, and then you can say, I knew you'd get good.
I knew you'd get good. That's why I let him off with a draw. That's right.
That's right. Yes.
But I thought it was interesting that, you know, he probably wasn't that strong theoretically in that line. I mean, exchanging the black squared bishops can't be a good thing to do.
Or more generally, exchanging pieces in an isolated queen pawn position like that. That's just pretty fundamental to those IQP positions, isn't it?
Yes, yeah. And if he plays it a lot, then but then I suppose by 10 he hasn't had a chance to play it many times.
Yeah, well.
He's been a professional player all his life.
Yeah.
Since before he was
in a lot of games, I imagine.
Okay. Now how do I get back to the start?
You've got to. There's a box in my screen saying save, yes, no, cancel.
Save, cancel.
Well, it's cancelled. It's saved already, isn't it?
Yeah, I've already. It's already saved. But I'll. What I'll do, I'll just flick back to. There we are. Back to the beginning, and right. So this is a second game. and I'm white, and he plays G6. Now this.
Can't see the board.
You haven't got it yet.
Oh, can you not see this?
No,
No.
we're still with Freddie.
Right. Let me stop sharing. Okay. Let me see if I can share again. Okay. Let's go back to this one. Can you see this? Yep.
Yep.
Yeah.
We see a list of games.
You're not seeing. Ah, okay.
The second game against Freddie.
New share. How about this?
Uh-huh.
Ah,
How are we doing now?
Got it.
Yeah, got it.
Yeah. Brilliant. Okay. So this is so I'm white and he plays G6.
Accelerated dragon.
Accelerated dragon.
This is a hyper accelerated dragon.
Yes, it is the hyper, and there is a book on it. I did a little bit of preparation against it in the ECF Online Seniors event the previous Christmas, because I had an opponent, Jonathan Hill, who plays this a lot. So I did a little bit of exploratory work, and because it wasn't a line I had much success against as white. So I prepared a line against him, which was very successful. So I thought I'd try it out on Freddie. There is a book on this by Panjwani, I think, Hyper Accelerated Dragon. And Freddie played the line that he recommends. So the essence of it is to play C3, which is obviously blocking the long diagonal for the bishop. It means when I play D4, follow up with D4, he's probably going to have to take it, because if he doesn't, I'm sort of then threatening to take on C5, and that may give him some problems. So I'm looking to build up a big centre, if I can, if he plays bishop G7. They'll often take on D4, so a typical line might be something like this, D5, and then I'll play E5. And I've had this line a few times and had reasonable success with it, so I'm reasonably comfortable playing this as white. So this is my preferred line, but what Freddie played was actually D5, which is the line that Panjwani recommends. So funnily enough, we've now got a C3 Sicilian.
Like the first game.
Like the first game, but this time I'm white and he's black. And crucially, he's got his pawn on G6, whereas I had mine on E6. But other than that, it's much the same. Now, this is quite an interesting line. One of the tricky lines here for black is if he plays knight C6 quickly and bishop G4, he can end up castling queenside. So if I was to play knight A3, for example, which is sort of line I quite like, in this position, is it here? I'm getting confused. I can't remember now. Can't remember. I think the line here where. Ah, yes. If he plays here,
Go back.
yeah, I can go back. I think. Ah, sorry, that's it. I think the idea is to play bishop here first. That's right. And then if knight here, then drop the queen back to D7. And you can play knight C6 and castle queenside. And black's probably okay in this line. So, my pet
Clive,
move
can I just interject an observation?
Yeah.
I was just looking up Freddie Gordon's games on chessgames.com.
Oh yeah.
And I found a game with this exact position from the European Team Championship November 2021 that Freddie Gordon played as white against a guy called Naboza Nikcevic. I don't know where they're from, but
And what did
Yeah.
Freddie play as white here? Did he D4?
Hold on, I'm just looking up whose opponent was. Yeah, his opponent was a 2400 player from Montenegro.
Right.
Yeah, let's have a look what Freddie played here. D4.
He played D4, yes, which is the main move.
He played well. D4, Bishop G7, Knight A3.
Yeah. D4, Bishop G7. What was the result?
Draw.
It was a draw, right?
Draw in 31.
Okay, I still think this could be a little bit awkward for White. Actually, I don't think White's doing great in this line, but okay.
Maybe Freddie concluded that he didn't do. He wasn't happy with his position in White in that game and thought he'd give it a go as Black.
Give it a go as Black. Yep. So I played my pet preparation against this line, which is Queen B3. Now, I thought I'd invented this move, but it turns out that it had been played before. I think Korchnoi tried it against Judith Polgar when she was quite young. So obviously another great player thought he'd try and catch out a junior with this move. And in fact, I think he might have lost it. So it didn't work out quite so well for him. The interesting question is, what should Black play here?
The same as Korchnoi. Is that? No, it's not.
That's right. Polgar. Polgar did find the best move here for Black.
Oh, right.
Bishop E6.
Bishop E6 is the best move. Yeah. Yeah. It's a strange move because obviously you're sort of blocking the center, and that bishop might become a target later. But White's lost a bit of time with his queen, and of course you are threatening Queen E4 check, winning the queen. So White's got to do something fairly quickly. So the line I'd prepared was a bishop here check. You can go D7 or C6, Knight D7. And then D3 to stop the Queen E4 check. Now, if Black takes this free pawn that you've offered, White can play C4, and I think that bishop is trapped. So I don't think Black can take the pawn. Probably.
If he plays A6, isn't your bishop similarly?
Well, the interesting thing is I've actually got the tricky move, Queen A3.
Oh my God.
So,
you could take on D7 with check, but I was just trying to be obtuse.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah. And now, of course, I'm threatening. I can bring the bishop here. It's an interesting game. I think on balance, Black is fine in it, but there are a few tricks and twists in it, and I'd be very happy to give it a go in a game as White. So it is my sort of pet line. But in both games where I've played it, both times the opponent has actually exchanged queens. To give us this position, which I think is really rather nice for White, because I've got an open A file. I'm going to be putting something on B5. When I play D4, I'm probably going to take back with a knight. Could be either knight. And I'm going to get a bit of pressure against Black's queenside. So I think this is quite a good line for giving White a bit of pressure. And the computer seems to agree with me, because it actually gives white's, I wasn't quite here, but I think basically it's saying white is at least +1, plus 1.4, I think. As we see, it can be tricky to play for black. So knight f6, knight a3. And now I've got a very real threat of knight b5 and to c7. And it's really not easy to meet. So Freddie played knight a6, which is probably the best move. And now I've got a number of choices. I can double the pawns. I can just take this and put a knight on c.
Clive, wouldn't a6 have been a simpler defence to?
No, it's the
Not really,
pinned.
because I still do it anyway.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. Fair enough. Yeah.
Although I am a little sport for choice, because I could consider bringing the knight here. I've actually got. Yeah, the only problem with this line for white is you are spoilt for choice. You do have lots of nice squares to put pieces on. So yeah. So knight a6 is the best idea. So I could take this and bring a knight to the lovely c4 square.
Well, it can't be. Yeah, it's not easy to shift.
It's not easy to shift. The only thing is black does get sort of open lines for his rooks. This pawn is probably going to go. It's an interesting game, but I prefer white, but I was more in the mood for keeping the pressure on. So I played d4. He takes it because I am probably threatening to take that pawn. I'll take the knight and then take the pawn. So he takes it, and I can take back with the knight. And now my mind is, well, I could bring this knight to b5 and that knight to c4. And of course, now I've cleared the c pawn, b4, b5 is a possibility. It feels to me that white's just got lots of nice ideas here. So Freddie just develops, and we both just quietly get on with development. And he plays e5, which is probably a good move. I mean, it makes some sense to try and claim some space in the center. It sort of asks the question, but my knight's going here anyway. And he plays knight c5, which is quite a good move, really. I mean, he is threatening this pawn, although I'm not too worried about it. Certainly the computer liked that and thought that was the best move. Now my best is probably to play bishop c4 to hold this pawn, and obviously I'm sort of eyeing up f7, and then I can bring the knights in. But I was feeling a little bit gung-ho at this point, and played bishop e3 instead. I thought I'd just give up a pawn. So he takes it, and rook d1. And now I think he probably should consider b6 at this point. I'm threatening to take the a pawn, and he probably should do something about that. But I still think I've got quite a lot of play for the position. And you know, probably going to bring a knight into d6. And my bishops are going to become really quite powerful.
Aren't you threatening knight c7?
Yes, I have got knight c7.
And if you rook b8, you've got bishop takes a7.
Yes, but if he plays b6 here,
that stops that. Yeah,
it stops it. I mean, I could still do this. Yeah, it's. I mean, I could, you know, bring the knight to this square. I could bring another knight in. Yeah, there's a lot of things going on. It's a position full of possibilities, but I think b6 is his best bet. He brought the bishop out, and I decided I'd help myself to the pawn with the bishop. Mainly because the knight seems quite nice here now. Again, the knight's hard to dislodge, protected by another knight. And he played knight e4, which was a little bit surprising. I wasn't really thinking that he'd be coming down, trying to put a knight on d2, but it bothered me a little bit that with a knight on d2, I was going to lose my sort of power down the d file. So I decided to let him do it and give up the bishop for the knight, so he'd only have one knight, and also just to help develop my knight. So he brings his knight here, attacking the rook, rook e1, takes the bishop off, and I take back. So now he's got two bishops. We're level on pawns, but I just feel I've got lots of nice squares for my knights. You know, if I can get I've got knight in, I could come into b6, c7 still. I still got control over d6, and his knight on e4 is going to get dislodged with f3.
Yep.
In a minute.
And aren't you 2 pawns against 1 on the queen side, which could potentially be a winning endgame?
Yes, yes. I mean, that's my long-term advantage. So my plan here really is to try and get those pawns moving. The interesting thing here is that in this position, he's actually got bishop e6 as a possibility, which I hadn't noticed. And so if I take the knight with a rook, then he's got f5 and he can hassle the rook, which is defending this knight. And these pawns could be quite unpleasant, I think. So I think that's probably his best line here, but it's again hard sort of thing to see, particularly in a short time control.
Yeah.
The worry would be that Irving Sherniff would say the white pieces fall like a house of cards or something like that. Or what, like ripe apples. That's it. Ripe apples.
Ripe apples. Yeah. Yeah. I'm not sure they are quite yet, but I will probably have to rearrange them shortly.
Yes.
As you see. So he plays rook a d8. Now I'm not sure that's the right rook. I think that rook on a8 is doing quite a useful job putting pressure on the bishop. So I'm not sure moving that is necessarily the smartest thing to do. But so I think the other rook would have been better. Also, I thought, you know, there might be chances I could get a bishop on c5 and hassle the other rook, which sort of I could well end up forcing him to swap off, which will give me the d file. So I started to dislodge the knight. He takes a pair of rooks off, which again I'm not sure helps him, because the rook on e1 wasn't really attacking the knight, it was the pawn that's attacking the knight. So in this position he's now got a little bit of a problem with his knight. He's suddenly running out of squares, and he may be running out of, and I've got control of the d file, so I was thinking this position is looking quite good. But then he surprised me with bishop e6. So now he's got this idea of ignoring one knight to attack the other. So here's another question. Where do I play now? What should I be doing in this position? And I took a fair bit of time over this, I must admit. But the engine thinks I came up with the right idea.
What's knight a5 like?
Well, knight a5 looks a bit scary because knight on the rim is dim, but it does seem to win a pawn. And I couldn't see how he was going to immediately get it back. So yes, knight a5 is what I played. And when he moves the knight back, and I think that's pretty much his only square to go back to. I help myself to a pawn. So the pressure, all this pressure I've had on the queen side has sort of told in that I'm now 2 passed pawns up. He's got the 2 bishops, and now it's a question of whether I can get these pawns moving, or whether the 2 bishops are going to end up dominating the board.
He really should have kept his rook on A8, shouldn't he?
Yeah.
Because there was always chances of threatening the knight on B5. You showed a couple of examples of that.
Yeah.
And even now, what's his rook doing on F8?
Yes. Yeah.
I just don't get why he put that rook over.
No, I think that was a mistake. I think we.
Yeah.
I think
How does the computer assess this position? Is it a big lead for white?
It's I think it's a +2.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's good enough for white. It does think white's strong here, but I think had he brought the other rook over, or played the bishop E6 move, a couple of moves back, then it was only marginally better for white. Probably equal. So now he plays bishop B3, which I think is a very good move. He's stopping these pawns moving. Obviously, he's hitting my rook. So next question is really, what should I do with my rook here? Where should the rook go?
Can it go to D8 to swap off?
Yeah, I could do. That might make some sense. The only problem was that I couldn't see how I was going to get my queenside pawns moving with this bishop here. If we swap off on D8, then I'm quite a few knight moves away from even attacking this bishop.
You can bring it back to C5.
There's no rush, is there? If you're 2 pawns clear on the queen side, you want to swap everything off, don't you?
Yep.
Yeah, I could swap the rooks off. I think it probably would be sensible.
In general terms, is he threatening E4 to liberate the bishop and liquidate, clarify on the king side? I mean, is that?
Yeah, it's something. It's a plan he will have. I'm not sure it's necessarily a strong threat at this stage.
I just wondered. I mean, I might be inclined to play rook E1 here, if only by virtue of the fact that it may have some relevance later.
Well, this is what I did. I did actually play rook E1 here.
Oh, good move, Clive. Yes.
Ironically, the computer reckons the best plan is to play actually rook A1, and then bring the rook to A3 to hit the bishop.
Oh, that's obvious. Yes.
Yeah. I was a bit annoyed when I sort of saw that afterwards, because in a very similar position, I found that maneuver against Olga Latipova in the Keith Richardson Memorial when we played it online a year or so ago. In a very similar position, I came up with the same rook maneuver, rook A1 to A3. So I was a bit cross that I didn't see it this time. But anyway, in the game I played rook E1, and he dropped the knight back. Now, actually here, this is where he should play rook A8. So he should take advantage of the fact that I haven't claimed the A file, and it makes sense for him to try and claim it. Because if he plays rook A8 here, he can follow it up. He's obviously, I've got to be careful because he's going to be threatening my knight in a minute, and then attacking the bishop. He can also then drop his knight back to E8 to defend this pawn, and the knight on E8 defends C7 and D6. And I think then it's an interesting game. It's going to be quite a challenge. But anyway, he didn't. He played knight D7. And I should probably still attack the bishop with the rook, but I thought I'd attack it with the knight. He attacks my knight. And now here, I played C4, which is not the best. My thinking was with c4 that if he takes it, I'll take back, and then I've got a clear run through home with my pawn. It's probably not quite as simple as that, because well, we'll see. There's some he gets some play, but I do have quite a good move here, which I'd missed. Bearing in mind that he's sort of threatening to play rook a8. I do have quite a handy move instead of defending that knight, which is to bring the knight to c7. Now that stops him playing rook a8. The other interesting thing is that bishop on a8 on a4 now. This bishop is now a little bit short of squares. Yes. And I am actually threatening b3 to even to win it. Bishop. So I think knight c7 is probably the best plan, and would have been stronger.
He can just play rook c7, rook c8, can't he?
Well, he can play rook c. Yes, rook c8 is his best here. But the nice thing is I've got knight d5, and I'm threatening this intermediate check on e7. He'll probably defend that with a bishop and bring the bishop round. But now I could probably, so I'm not sure if I can play b3 here because he's got, oh, he hasn't got rook c5. Oh, he's got bishop c5 check. And after bishop takes, rook takes, he'll be hitting both my knights. So here I think I've probably got to play something like b4 to keep control of the black squares. Yeah, it's, I mean, it's an interesting position, but I think I'm probably still much stronger here.
Winning for white, not just stronger.
Yeah, I think
the bishop on f8's not particularly a good piece in that final position. And
no,
all your pieces are good, and you're a pawn up, and you've got two connected passed pawns.
Yeah, I should be able to keep it going, but with so many pieces on the board, there's just so much to look at. And in a rapid game, you end up eating time quite quickly, as we shall see. So I played c4, and he plays the very intelligent rook a8. And now, of course, he is threatening to take on b5 and pick up my bishop. And if I move the bishop, then my knight on a5 is exposed. So I bring the knight to c6. Which seems very sensible. And now he plays e5, e4 rather. Now this is where we're getting to quite an interesting position. So now I've moved this pawn off c3. Suddenly this diagonal is loosened up a bit. So e4, he's threatening this pawn, and without thinking too much, I played b4. And the question is, what can black do here?
He's got takes on b5, takes on a7, and bishop d4 check.
Yes, exactly.
Slight concern.
Yeah. I mean, the bishop here is nice in that it's controlling the diagonal, and the bishop d4. At the moment, he can't play bishop d4 check because I've got three pieces all attacking the d4 square. But actually, he can take here and take here.
Jonathan said, yes.
And come here with check, king there, and take there. Now, at the time, I had seen this, and I had thought that rook c1 was just too strong. It turns out that if he plays bishop b6 here, it's very difficult for me to get my king in, for me to get my rook in and actually cause any trouble. The bishop and knight seem to be holding everything. I didn't think they would. I thought this would be better for white, but my suspicion is this is probably only a draw. because it's very difficult to get in, and by the time he gets his king across, then he's going to be doing fairly well.
By the way, Clive, instead of allowing all this by playing b4, should you have played bishop d4? Was that a better technical move? After
So
e4.
here, should I play bishop d4? I think. I can't remember what I should have done here. Yeah, I mean, bishop d4 probably makes some sense. Yeah, I mean, it just keeps me two pawns up, doesn't it?
Well, one anyway.
Yeah.
Grandmasters can count as.
Yeah, yes, but effectively, because this pawn's going, it's going to be 3 against 2 on the king's side, and it's going to take a while to clear it. It would have been quite good to swap the back square bishop off as well, take a pair of bishops off. Yeah, it's
okay.
Probably that would make some sense.
You're better in the game as well, though.
Yes,
so game's quite tempting.
Yeah. No, I think that may well have made some sense. Yeah, I was definitely getting a bit too excited here. So bishop takes b5 for him. And now rook d1, I think, is my best line. It's the line that forces him to find knight e5 as an only move. And then when I play rook d6, threatening b6, he's got knight c4. And I've spent a bit of time looking at this, and I think black's okay. I think black is just surviving this.
Hoping b6 was a move, but it's.
Yeah, I can't quite get it. I can't.
No.
Quite get it in. It's frustrating. It's frustrating. I mean, he's got these sort of checks as well with the knight. So it may be I've got to do something like this, and then rook b6. This was the line I was looking at, but I can't quite make it work for white. So. I think I'd have to say probably it's a draw at that point. But he took on f3, and suddenly none of this works because the rook's back in the game.
Going back, sorry, Clive. After e4, b4, bishop takes b5.
Yeah.
Takes back, rook a7, knight a7. Bishop d4 check, king f1, bishop a7. What about just rook takes e4?
Yes, I could do that.
You're definitely better there, quite a lot, but
yeah, I don't think it's winnable because I think he's able to get the king close to the knight.
Okay, you come up with your king now, king e2.
Yeah. Okay, and actually he's.
Yeah.
That might have caused me a bit of a problem.
So rook e6.
E6, I'm putting the king up.
Rook a6.
And bishop there.
And now king d3.
And I think he's got a blockade here. I can't get my king in.
I can see what you mean. Yes, you might be able to tease his h pawn with rook a8 and carry on, but it's white's better, but it may be drawn, as you say. Okay,
yes, I think probably with best play it's drawn, yeah, but it's more pleasant to play as white, obviously, but it's difficult to break through. At the time, I thought I could, but I don't think I can.
And both players are short of time, Clive, are they as well?
Oh yes, I'm very short of time.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm down to 3 minutes around here. So he's a little bit less short of time. I think he's about 8 or something like that. So,
okay.
He's been thinking a bit quicker than me. Happens with these youngsters. So after he takes on f3, which is really a mistake, I think, and plays bishop there, then I think here, again, I've got probably a sort of choice of ways of winning it. I think the one I probably like the most, simplest here, is to play knight c7 again, because he's got to take his rook all the way back to f8. And then now I can move this pawn on.
Looks good.
And this pawn is just going to run. Yeah. So I think his best response to knight c7 is probably to give this up. And probably not take the knight back, but to take this pawn. Hold on. This is. Yeah, I think this is probably his best bet, because he's got. No, sorry. This is in this position. Yeah, knight c7. I think this is where he can play, bizarrely enough, bishop c3.
Very pretty.
Yeah, it's very pretty complicated.
It's complicated. What sort of?
It's a real headache. So I can now, with my rook, attack any of his pieces, and he's not actually threatening any of mine. But nothing quite works, and he's probably going to give up the exchange and pick up at least one of these pawns, if not both.
What about rook e3 here? What's that do?
Yeah, so rook e3, that's where he can now take this.
Oh, you take
Yes, because
You take on c3.
Yeah.
Oh, he's taking on c7 as well, there. That's the problem.
Yeah.
You've got to.
this is such fun. Well, who cares? Yeah, I was going to say who cares, but
I know, it's just madness.
anyone think this is a board game?
No, you don't want this.
No.
Well, you still had knight e7 and knight e5. I don't know if that was any good though. Oh no, you take some c4 maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry. Yeah.
Yeah. It's
I'm just trying to work it out.
Yeah, it's. I mean, you could have a lot of fun trying to work all this out, but what I went with was c5 in the end. I thought I'm just going to push on now. Obviously, that leaves me, I haven't quite got the same cover on d4. So after this, so he's hitting my knight, and what it means is that if I move this knight, then this knight will go. If I move the knight to d4, then he can take it with check and pick up my bishop. It looks as though he's winning a piece here. But I've got knight c7. He takes my knight, I take his rook. And now if he takes my knight, I've got rook e8 check. But he's got knight e5 first. Which, when I went into this line, I had, of course, completely missed. So the question is here, I had 3 minutes time. I spent all apart from 15 seconds on this move. And the question is, what should white do here?
I'd be jolly tempted by rook takes knight.
Yeah, rook takes knight actually appears to leave me in some difficulty. So my knight's on pre, so I've got to bring it to here. And then after this,
yep,
that pawn's going. So we're going to be just level, and my pieces still aren't in great squares. So I think black is probably better with the two bishops here. So that doesn't quite work.
Can you play rook d1?
I can. Yeah. Rook d1 is what I played actually.
Okay.
And it's the best move, and I think it's still winning. So he takes on here with check, and my intention here was to play king f1 and let him take on h2 and then bring it to e2. Sorry, to e1. It's a horribly complicated position, but in fact white is slightly better. After king f1, I would be winning. What I did at this point, since I only had about 15 seconds, was to spend all my time trying to decide between f1 and f2, and by the time I played f1, I lost on time.
Still an amazingly tricky position for the last 15 moves or so.
Yes, yeah.
Well, what happens after he checks on h2?
So he takes on h2, and I come to king to f2. So if he takes my knight, I've still got this check picking up the bishop. So he can come here with check. And then I think I can put my king here.
Yeah.
And he's got bishop there, check. So he's now giving up trying to win this piece back. And he's focusing on giving my king a hard time. And I can play king d2.
What about king f3?
Yeah, king f3 I've got to be a bit careful because
It's
after f5,
Yeah.
Bishop c6 check.
Yeah, I'm almost getting mated here.
But aside from that,
it's going well. Yeah.
Yeah.
This is letting him get the black pawns forward. That's no good. Yeah.
I think I've probably spent too much time in lockdown looking at crazy studies and obscure, mating fours and things.
Yeah, blame Jonathan Levitt.
Yeah.
Yeah. Nothing to do with that, but I'm afraid I'm going to have to leave you now, gentlemen. That was most enjoyable. Take care. All the best to you.
Yep, thank you for coming.
Yeah, see you.
See you again.
Good evening.
Listen. So yeah, there's an awful lot still going on here, but I think after this bishop there, king d2, I think I'm still winning it. So I'm the exchange up, and I've got these outside pawns, but he obviously has got 3 pawns now.
Are you sure that c5 was such a good move? I was getting excited, and now actually feel sorry for the white player. I can actually.
Yeah, I think c5's given me a lot of problems because it's cut my bishop out.
Yeah, but I mean,
once your knight comes to c7, you can boot the bishop and move your b pawn, can't you?
Yeah, and the b pawn just rolls.
I accept all of that and more. It's just me. I just thought, all of a sudden that had activity, even if he wasn't winning, or I didn't know whether he was winning or not.
Yeah, Yeah, it's a very good example of why you should leave yourself a bit of time.
Get away.
When you get to a position like this, you still need a lot of time to think about it and to convert it.
Yeah, your opponent is nearly 6 times younger than you are. Yeah. No, he is. Yeah.
Yeah, he is.
Yes.
Pretty agile.
But you've got 6 times more experience.
I have. Yeah, so I didn't start playing till I was 10, I don't think. So he's.
In those days, one didn't. I mean, it's yeah.
No, that's true. I suppose it was you sort of did it at something you took up at secondary school, really, rather than infant school these days.
Yeah.
So yeah, so a very sad end to the game, just when it was getting quite interesting. But I am convinced that I was still winning. I mean, here, yes, I think here is where we probably need to look for other things to play, and I think knight c7 is the key move, and just shifting the rook away from a8 or forcing him to give it up, and then it's an interesting game. I suspect, given how short I was of time, I probably still would have managed to lose it. But I felt I do feel proud of the game. I felt up to that point it would have been a very interesting game.
Yeah, sensible time limit you'd have had him, Clive.
Exactly.
Yeah.
If we'd been playing correspondence, I'd have certainly had him. Yeah.
When he writes or his father writes his book, it'll go in there, because probably that will be. Because Clive, isn't your game against Nigel Short in the book?
Yes.
Nigel Short, chess prodigy.
Yes. That my game. Yes, I played a move, and Nigel used it later, but not the way I used it.
He knows.
Now, I think he said in there, when I played h4 against the winner quite early on, and he said, "What is this?" At the time, I thought this was an absolute rubbish idea, and the way I played it was rubbish. But
right,
he actually found a way to make it work later on in life. And
yes, against Sarkis.
Yes, yeah.
Yes.
So
Yes. System.
So who knows? Maybe if Freddie plays this line, he might adopt Queen B3 himself. And,
yeah, we'll see a surge of.
Yeah, it'll probably be named after him, and Korchnoi and I will be forgotten in history.
Very unlikely on both counts, I think.
Very good couple of games.
Yeah, fantastic tactical.
Shall we take clearly winning in both games. So that was excellent play. Up to a point.
Well, thanks all for the therapy session. I feel better now. I've shared that, and
Shall we take a break for a few minutes and come back? Maybe if you haven't got anything else you wanted to show, maybe Paul's going to show us his game he mentioned earlier.
It's an embarrassment, but I will show it if you want.
Thank you very much.
I don't mind embarrassing you.
It would cheer me up, Paul, to see somebody win a game they didn't deserve to.
Let's take a break for a few minutes.
Okay.
Cool. See you shortly. Cheers.
So, okay, Paul, if you would like to show us the most embarrassing game you played recently.
Yeah, I'm prepared to do that.
Thank you.
All right, let's share screen. Okay, can you see a chessboard?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, here we go. So this is me against Maurice Lawson. I've played him he's quite a tricky player. And this is board 1 for Camberley against Reading last week. I was white. Tim Davis was sitting next to me, so he saw this. And it's a fairly standard opening. So bishop e7. This is a setup I've played many times, so I'm quite comfortable in this position. It's fine for white. Pretty standard stuff. You can play bishop takes knight here. I typically retreat the bishop. And then he played this move, which you don't see very often. Knight e4 at this stage. I haven't castled, so I played bishop takes bishop. He played queen takes bishop. And then here I played bishop d3, which seems a very natural move, hitting the knight twice. but the computer doesn't like that. The computer ranks I should play queen c2 or queen b3. But anyway, I played this. It looks a natural move. And he continued quite merrily. I think this was a prepared line that he knew and I didn't. He played here, I took, and he took here, I took here. Now at this stage, I thought this position was better for white. I've got 2 pieces developed. He's only got, he hasn't got any of his queenside pieces developed. And I've got more space in the center. But he played here, he played b6. And he's going to put his bishop on b7, and this bishop turned out to be quite strong in the game. So I think this line worked quite well for him. I castled, and then he played bishop here. The computer says I should play a4 here, but I played queen e2. I quite like getting my queen off the d file. I like to get my rooks on d1 and c1. And I quite like playing e4 and sometimes even e5 in these positions. So that's why I played my queen to e2. He hit back with c5, which is a very natural move. So what would you play here as white? I can play knight e5. I'd considered that, but I don't think it achieves very much because he just hits it with knight d7 or even knight c6. So I played e4. I'm of the opinion if you get a chance to play e4 unopposed, it's worth doing. And I was expecting him to play knight c6 here. It seems a very natural move, but he didn't.
Oh,
yes.
Well, you quite rightly said at the beginning you moved your queen to e2 so that you get your rooks in the centre and all that stuff. That's behind in development. Why aren't you getting your rooks before launching your attack in the middle?
Well, you can. Well, because he can play after knight c6 or d7. He can play e5, which is maybe not so good, and then e4. If I don't play e4, he can play e5 and e4 under some circumstances.
Oh, okay.
So I played e4. He played knight d7, which surprised me a little because the knight can't. The knight can't go to b6. It can't go to c5, and if I play e5, it can't go to f6. So I thought this was a rather strange move, but in fact, this was definitely part of his plan.
It takes away the pressure of d4, doesn't it?
It does. So what would you play here as white? Now he is threatening to play e5 here, I think. Or I thought.
So you play e5?
I played e5, which turns out to be a mistake. The computer doesn't like it. And what I'm thinking when I play e5 is I want to play my knight to d2, to e4, and to d6. If you can get a knight on d6, then it's terrific. And if he takes off if he plays bishop takes knight, I get my queen on e4 and my bishop on d3. I'm very happy with that position too. So I thought this was fine for me, and I thought I was ahead here. But in actual fact, the computer reckons black slightly ahead here, and you'll see why shortly.
Wow.
Because I don't get a chance to maneuver my knight round. He played his rook here, putting some implied pressure on d4. So I put my rook here, rook's in the center, as we were discussing. And he played pawn takes, pawn takes. Now, he played a move I wasn't expecting here.
Not knight b8 or something.
Knight f8.
F8, wow.
Yeah, and the knight is coming to g6, and I thought the knight was then heading towards f4, which is quite a little bit unpleasant. So perhaps I should play queen e3 here, but even if I play, and I could play bishop d3 and then prevent the knight coming to g6 maybe, but actually I just simply played this simple move, rook c1, but maybe I don't have time to play that because he now played his knight here. And if I put my bishop on d3, which is what I want to do, he brings his knight to f4, which is a little unpleasant. So I played queen e3 to prevent knight f4. And he played a move here which surprised me.
Take on f3.
No, he didn't take on f3. I would have been quite happy if he to move that bit. His bishop is his white square's bishop is better than mine actually.
Queen b4.
Knight h4.
Bishop
Knight
d5.
He played knight h4.
Knight h4.
Yeah.
Wow.
Now, this is unpleasant in some ways. He's threatening to give me a double pawn on f3 at very least.
You've half got an isolated queen pawn.
Yeah, my queen pawn is weak. Actually, it's not particularly good. And I can't move my knight now. If I try my knight to d2 to e4 maneuver, my g2 pawn falls. So I thought about this for a long time in this position, and in the end, I decided I can play bishop e2, but in fact, the computer reckons my best move here is knight takes knight, and that's what I played. Queen takes knight. Now in this position, this is better for black. I think he's now got pressure on d4, both vertically and laterally, and his bishop is better than my bishop. And he's got two against one on the queen side for the ending. So the computer reckons black's ahead here.
After knight g6, Paul, did you contemplate g3? I mean, I know it weakens you on the long right diagonal, but
no, I didn't, because I didn't see the knight coming to. I didn't anticipate the knight coming to h4.
Well, you saw it coming to f4. You saw it coming to f4 instead of queen e3. Maybe g3.
Yeah, it just feels horrible with his bishop on b7 to weaken the. I mean, I could bring my bishop back to f1 and g2, but that's a bit of a slow maneuver.
Yeah.
It's easy afterwards, but you mentioned bishop d3, bishop e4 prior to rook c1, and that probably would have neutralised the bishop on b7, wouldn't it?
Yeah. Well, I don't think I've got time to play it. I didn't really have time to play it. Now he's threatening queen g4, and he's also threatening to bring his rook across. And if he changes rooks on the c file, then I'll be weak on d4. So he's got a number of things here. So here I played f4. I can play g3. And if I play g3, I think he plays queen e4, which I reckoned was slightly better for him.
What about f3? Is f3 any good?
Sorry?
F3 any good?
There was a reason I didn't like f3. What was it?
Doesn't look too bad.
Doesn't look too bad, no.
Could go queen g5 or something.
Well, I can take the queens off, I guess, and then move my king up to e3. That I would be quite happy with that. I played here. He played this, and it's a very subtle threat here. Not mate on g2. I can play g3 here, but I played bishop f1 at this stage, and he played rook c8. So that's the position at this stage. And here I played g3, and I'm planning to put my bishop on g2. Okay, so here's a question for you. What's black's best move here?
h5?
f3.
Sorry?
Rook c1.
Rook c2?
Yeah. Rook c2 is the move.
Rook c2.
Rook c2 is an amazing move.
Rook c2.
Rook c2, because if I take it, he plays queen takes rook here.
Yeah.
And he's on this, and he's all over the place, and this bishop's pinned. He didn't see that, fortunately, and he played this move, which is because otherwise his if he allows me to play bishop e2, then his queen gets kicked around a bit, and his attack goes. So he played here, which pretty much forces queen takes queen, bishop takes, and I think he thought this was good for him now, especially if I play rook e1. Obviously, I'm dropping the d pawn. So here I'd seen this. I played rook takes rook, and rook d2, and I thought I was holding this. He's got the 2 pawns against one on the queen side. I'm going to move my king up, and so on. So I thought this was slightly better for black. He's got the C file, which is really quite useful, and it's very difficult for me to activate my D pawn. He played king here, I played king here, and at this stage I offered him a draw, which he declined. Funnily enough, he played bishop here, which is a good move. He's hitting that A2 pawn, and he can come down with his rook to C3 and then A3, and I can't hold that pawn.
His bishop's in a great position, isn't it?
Which is why I played bishop G2 to try and neutralize this. The only trouble with that is if he plays bishop takes bishop, my king's going backwards, really, away from the center. But I have to do something about that bishop. And he did take, I took. Now, who's winning this position?
Black, probably.
Yeah, I slightly prefer black here because it's difficult to activate this pawn on the deep file.
And that queenside pawn majority should be quite a useful advantage.
Yeah, I think it should. So here we're getting into we're starting to eat up time now. So I thought at this stage he might play rook c3 to prevent my king advancing to here, but he didn't. He played here, I played here, he played here, I went here. Now I'm threatening d5. So he checked me, I came back, and he went back to the c file. I went back here, and he played quite an interesting move. He played rook c4. So what should white play here?
Excellent question.
Tempted by G4 and F5, but
that's what I played. I played G4. G4 and F5 is a route to give me. I've got to get some play. I've got to get some activity with my central pawns. I can't be too passive. So I played G4. He went down here, and here I think I went wrong. The computer. What do you think is the best move for white here? What would you play here?
F5.
Yeah. F5.
F5 is what the computer recommends. I played D5. And he checked me. I come back here, and then he took, I took, he went here, and I'm forced to play rook D2. When you're trying to draw, it's best to keep the rooks on. If you're trying to win, it's best to get the rooks off.
Ooh.
Okay, who's winning this position?
Surely black.
I prefer black.
I prefer black. I read this as a win for black. He played king here.
Yeah.
And I was really worried about G5 here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
G5 looks a really nasty move. And once that E pawn is isolated, I can't defend the E4 pawn and stop the queen side pawn.
H4, haven't you?
That's what I played.
Yeah.
He can still play G5.
Yeah, he can, but
No.
But he didn't play G5.
Hold on. If he
G5,
plays G5, F takes G.
H5.
yeah.
F takes E followed by H5.
Yeah.
How clear is that?
No, that's still.
Doesn't that work?
The king can still get back, but
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, we're just about to reach the critical juncture of the game. Right, there's only a few moves left. He played H5.
Ooh.
What would you play here as white?
You have to take it, don't you?
No, king E3.
Is there anything with
I
F5?
don't know.
F5 looks fun.
We just plays king takes
E5.
E5, doesn't he?
I think you take on H5, don't you?
G5.
Oh, yeah.
Oh no, G5 you played.
G5, because then you can play G6 if he takes the pawn on F4.
Yeah,
So the king E3 loses, I think, to H takes G.
Well, king E3, HG, king E4.
Yeah. And then he plays G6.
Okay, so you haven't got F5. Yeah. Okay.
So there are two moves really. There's G5 and G takes H. One of them draws and one of them loses.
Well,
according to the computer. I chose the one that loses. I played G5.
Oh.
This is desperate now. He played King F4.
F5.
King F5, sorry, yeah, King F5. And at this stage, it's almost resignable here, because if he plays G6 next move,
Yeah.
I'm losing definitely, because he's
Yeah,
just going to
yeah.
advance his queenside pawns. So I set a little trap. I played King D3, which looks like a mistake,
And he took the pawn.
oh no.
and he took the pawn,
Hey!
Oh,
dear.
wow. G6.
Oh no.
and he resigned.
Oh, no.
Oh. So go back a couple of moves.
Wow. Wow.
So
Yeah,
I thought G takes H5 but lost but apparently it doesn't.
It's a very sharp after King F5, isn't it? But
New variation. He goes here, I think.
yeah.
Why can't I do that? Well, I'll show you in the computer. He plays King D5 is best for him.
That's a hard move, mind.
Oh, well,
Yeah.
King F5 is fine.
King F5 looks, and now that looks winning, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Not
But
enough.
it doesn't.
I don't know. It's
King
But
E-
believe it or not, King
Very
E3, you can draw here. So he plays B5, say. And we play King here.
Oh,
And look what the computer says.
Good grief.
He plays King takes. This looks hopeless.
well, how can that be drawn?
Yeah, why she... Hang on.
Yeah, watch.
Ah, that's a good one. Yeah.
Ah. we've got
A5.
H- What are we going to do?
Looks like you're behind there.
We're going to go here.
Oh, I see.
And we're going to promote one of these.
Oh,
Each pawn
wow.
goes through. Well.
Is that not fast enough?
oh.
The E pawn's going to get there
King
first.
takes F7. B3.
Yeah,
God.
surely.
A takes B3.
Oh, I
H6.
see. It's a draw because
E6.
E6.
No, or H6 apparently. How
Yeah.
odd. No, that's it makes much difference. Yeah.
This is drawing.
Yep.
Because but that's a ridiculous draw. If you let your opponent queen first, you are very worried. That seems strange that black doesn't win having queen first.
But look, well, that's the,
Oh,
That's
anyway. That is the continuum,
Yeah.
which obviously I didn't see. It's very hard to
well,
see
did
that
you see
part.
all of that?
Yeah, but if he played King D5, it's much easier for white.
All right, let's just.
Wow. Did you have plenty of time?
No, we were both short of time.
Okay.
We're both about 2 minutes or so. But and after you've been playing a long game, you speed up at the end and you make more mistakes. So I played this. He played H5. Yeah. So and here the correct move is G takes H. I played G5, which just loses very quickly if he plays G6 because I've got no play after that. So.
Yeah.
But if you look at this here, that G takes H5, it's still showing as negative. It's a long calculation to work out that it's net positive, a draw.
Or even after
But eventually,
King D5.
Sorry,
Even after King D5.
I think so. Let's see. So. Right, let's see. A king. It's giving King F5 or F, which we've just looked at.
We'll try
And it's also-
King D5. Just move it.
All right,
What
King
about
D-
B5? What about B5 here?
B5's good.
New variation. Oh, draw.
He's saying King D5. All right.
I think it's got to stop King E4 and F5 check, I guess. I guess that's the idea.
Oh, yeah.
It tasty.
What's that? Minus 1.73.
Yeah.
I think.
But what you did was you made a bad move, and he then missed the win and made a loss, a losing move.
Yeah, after King F4, when I played King D3, all he had to do was play G6, and it was over. But in this position, I can play on for a while because he can't bring his king.
No, he pushes his pawns on the queen side, forces your king to go away to the queen side.
It does, yeah.
They just rounds up the F pawn and the E pawn and pushes the F pawn.
Can he do that?
Well, what's
You're A5 now.
It was
A5.
recommending A3. I don't know why. Yes.
It likes King E4.
Yeah, King E4 wins now.
It does, doesn't it?
Don't move your
Yeah,
king.
King D5 is better for him, but
This is Zugzwang. You can't move your king.
Well, here it's giving King C3.
Oh.
Let's try the King D5 now. It's got it's got white ahead.
Got clear advantage in one.
No, I
line.
want to play
Black.
D5 before King B. I want a King D5. Played the moves in the wrong order.
All right. So this is the position after
King
pawn takes H5. What are you going to play now?
Pawn takes pawn.
Yep.
King D5.
Says it's drawn.
King C3.
King C3.
No.
How is that drawn?
All right. What are you going to play? King E4.
Yeah. Well,
It
can
looks
we
like the
try
obvious.
it? It's a
Looks like the
critical
obvious
line,
move.
isn't it?
King E4.
Oh, King
Now-
C4.
Yeah,
Well, I'm
because-
going to snaffle these pawns. This is going to run through. It's going to take you a while to pick up these. A6.
Hang on, one.
I think the idea is to go
No,
for
no,
the
no,
F7 pawn again.
Hang on. Just want to calculate this. 1, 2, 3, 4.
That's amazing.
9
is it?
moves. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But black queen's first.
After King takes F4.
After
You
king
mean?
takes F4.
Is King D5 the idea? To go after the
Yes.
F7 pawn
The
again?
King
Yeah, but then
D5
you
is
just
definitely an idea here.
Then you just play King F5.
Here.
Yeah, no, King F4.
After King D5.
King F4.
Well, we've done this before. This is the same.
Yeah, King D5.
This is a win for white.
Well, it might change its mind after a minute.
Hang on, I can't see how it's all been.
King F5?
The machine doesn't seem to have thought of that.
Hang on.
Oh, that's worse.
No, you can't play King F5.
That's a win for white now.
Hang on.
Oh, okay, because the king runs in the okay.
Okay.
Okay. That's the
Well, can we
position.
play D5 here?
Sorry?
It's too slow.
B5 is too slow.
It's too slow.
You've
Yeah.
got to
King
have
goes
done that
to
before.
King goes to E7.
Yeah.
One of the H pawns.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
It's
so-
surprising.
It is surprising that white could draw from that. And I didn't think white could, which is why I played the G5 thing, because I had seen that little trap. So that was my only hope at that stage. Anyway, okay, so that's the game.
Yeah, fantastically tricky
Well
pawn
done.
endings.
Yeah.
Yeah, just the
Fantastic.
pawn ending is interesting, isn't it, on its own? Yeah.
The
yeah.
pawn ending is interesting, yeah, and I would like to claim that I'd seen all that, but I definitely didn't. So that's how I snuck a word, and he wasn't happy.
No.
Not that he's ever happy. He's not laughing, boy, in Morris Lawson. He never smiles. He was particularly not happy about that result, I can tell you.
Well,
He also lost against Daniel.
He did, yes.
Shortly
Yeah.
afterwards, I believe.
Yeah, before. Yeah.
Oh, before.
It,
Okay.
if it,
Okay.
if it helps you sleep better at night, Paul, you can rest in the knowledge that in the last face-to-face season, I played Morris towards the end of the season. I think it was the second last game I played before lockdown, and I completely threw away a king and had completely drawn king and pawn ending against him when I was short of time. And
he's a very solid player.
He almost smiled.
Okay. All right. So that was my adventure last week.
Great. Thank you, Paul.
Thank you, Paul.